Morning, everybody. How are we doing today? It's a Thursday. I think it's the 1st of September or the 31st of August. I don't know. I can't remember. But it's Labor Day weekend coming up here in the U.S. And hopefully me and the wife are going to go to Chicago for a couple days. I haven't had a couple days off since Christmas last year. Not complaining. I've enjoyed doing this, but all the same, I could use a couple days off to charge my battery. And I mean, Chicago is always just fun for my blood. The architecture, the city, the record stores. I love being in Chicago. I'm actually wearing Reckless Records, which is a Chicago record store with 3 locations, I believe. I think there might be one in London too. I'm not sure if that one's still there or not, but love Reckless Records. And they have a pretty good selection of stuff. Chicago has a very diverse population, so a lot of the funk and jazz and soul records that are hard to find in some cities, because Chicago has such a huge black population, those records from the 60s and 70s show up pretty thick in Chicago. And the black record buying public was a 45 buying public and a radio listening public for most record store owners I've talked to over the years. They come in selling a bunch of 45s, not a whole bunch of LPs. And a lot of R&B was singles-driven music, so that the 45s did kind of make sense. And I've not met a ton of traditional jazz lovers that are African American. I just haven't. I mean, I think I've said before, most African Americans I knew when they wanted jazz, they didn't mean Monk or Miles. They meant Grover Washington or George Benson. Which, I mean, it's fantastic stuff, but it's also danceable. It's also very much R&B flavored, making it more R&B really than it is jazz. Part of that whole fusion crossover R&B era. And I'll take R&B jazz fusion over rock jazz fusion every time. Every time. The funk and space and pattern of blues and R&B lends itself nicely to the jazzier side of a guy like George Benson, very nicely. Roy Ayers, you know what I mean? Jazz has a lot of the same principles at work: space, composition, interlocking pieces from different members of the group. The rock and roll fusion jazz stuff, it's very guitar, sonically, yes, a lot of it's awful. I mean, I've not heard every John McLaughlin record, but the ones I have, Birds of Fire specifically, I can't make it through it. Just find it unlistenable. And a lot of people are like, oh my god, it's one of the greatest records ever. But each his own. I find that record, fingernails on a chalkboard, his guitar tone. And as a drummer, I've always loved good guitar tone. I mean, blues is as much in the tone of a player and his amp and his settings and how he hears himself as it is in the fingers and the soul of a player. Like, a tone has a lot to say. So I want to thank everyone for watching the last episode, where I kind of bared my soul a little bit, talked about some rather difficult, rather personal things. My wife and I have been kind of trying to reconcile, but it's been a tough year, you know. And I mean, for the most part, we're doing pretty good right now. I mean, it's up and down, you know, and I need to find strength to trust and to not question her constantly, because if I question her constantly, it's only going to make her feel defensive and isolate. So I need to have the strength to trust and to forgive. And again, jazz has taught me much about forgiveness. I always call Louis Armstrong the Great Forgiveness. And if he can extend his hand out to white America and forgive America for all its wrongs, so too shall I. You know, I hate to get a little biblical there on you, but so too shall I. I don't know about King James, but we'll do King Dan for today. But yeah, I just want to thank everyone in the comments and the feedback. And it was nice to see so many people kind of were touched and moved by my sharing. And I mean, it was something I debated about sharing several times. But I kind of waited held off until there was a bit more of a positive outcome. You know, didn't want to jump the gun on how much of negativity and piling negative feedback on top of a negative. It creates a negative cycle in our loop, and that could have been very destructive. So I wanted to wait till there was something a little bit more positive to reflect on. One other thing I want to share real quick is I heard from some townsfolk the last few days that there was a homeless person in town, and I guess he was run out of the town 5 miles to the east of us, Plainview, and they wanted nothing to do with a homeless person there. And so this guy has been here, and this morning I saw him. He was sitting on a bench across the street in front of the pizza shop, and my heart was moved, and I went over there and brought him a roll and a coffee, and chatted with him for a couple of minutes. And I mean, I think it's our job to help those who are down. And my wife worked in the homeless center for a long time, and most of us are a few bad breaks away from living out of a backpack. And not true in Denmark, probably not true in England, probably not true in France, Germany, Canada, New Zealand. Not to say those countries don't have some homeless, but there's a lot more programs, a lot more help, a lot more assistance in most of those places. That the homeless problem is a fraction of what it is here in America. The social networks that are in place are very limited, and the church often fills a lot of that vacuum because government has been refrained or restrained from operating in those avenues. People talk about government spending, and they act like buying a few homeless meals would be crippling to our economics, but we'll spend trillions on defense every year to fight fictional enemies that we have to manufacture to justify continuing that spending. But, I mean, fear is a powerful thing, and it's not to say we can live without defense, but I mean, there's many countries that live without the defense that we waste our taxpayer dollars on, and the fat cat contractors that are breaking in millions of dollars of taxpayers' money to not build schools and hospitals, to build aircraft carriers, to fight battleships that don't exist. But, I mean, we're all a few bad breaks away from being homeless. My wife learned that in the homeless center. A lot of these people were going through divorce, going through job loss, being laid off, losing their place. And most of them were, a lot of them were back on their feet within a few weeks to months. I mean, there's just enough help out there that people can kind of get back to work, get a paycheck or two, get into a place. And, I mean, there are programs that exist, and they're different all over regionally. Some cities have more programs available than others. A town like this has nothing. I'm surprised it's here, not in Rochester, which is over 100,000 people, 15 miles further west of here. I mean, it's good to have empathy for those who struggle and who are in a down place. And I told the guy, I'm like, have a coffee here, here's a roll. I need some good karma myself. I mean, we all need a little bit of good karma sometimes, a little good luck, good fortune. The roll of the die, something needs to shade them dice the right way. And maybe some good karma, some good energy, some good positive interaction can help shape our own destinies, I guess, for lack of a better word. But yeah, so thanks for everyone responding on the last episode. And again, I appreciate the support, and I'll continue to need your support, thoughts, and prayers, because it does take a certain degree of fortitude and strength to be able to shut the mind off and not question everything and just let your heart kind of lead you. I think my wife's intentions are back to being where they once were, but she's still struggling with depression. She's still struggling with anxiety. She's still struggling with some health issues, and all of that makes her negative and exhausted at times. And sometimes I don't want to misread some of those symptoms. So, again, thanks for everyone for listening to that. And we all deserve to be in each other's thoughts and prayers. And prayers is a relative thing. Just speaking positive about those we love, it's a prayer to the cosmos on some level. And that's all it takes. Just to know people give a shit does have a lot of value. And it meant a lot to me to see a lot of the comments I got from people, and Thank you, everybody. Bottom of my heart. Thank you, everybody. So, moving on to today, I only got a couple of real quick things I want to talk to you about. We are trying to go to Chicago for the long weekend, and I'm opening up today here, and I got to make some money today. Money's been kind of slow these last couple of weeks again. Hopefully, with school coming back, things will get back to where we were last spring when things were pretty solid. But I want to talk to you about a record I've talked to you probably several times before. I know I have. But again, I listened to it the other day. And if you're looking for a place to start with Julie London, aside from Cry Me a River, which you can download, you can stream, you can get a 45 of that song. One of the great songs, film soundtracks. It was wonderful in V for Vendetta. Cry Me a River, Barney Kessel on the guitar. One of the great melancholic songs of any era. Fantastic song. Julie London's a great, sultry, smoky temptress. A little flirtatious lady, as you can see. For 1958, this was pretty risque, to say the least. But she's that dangerous femme fatale, almost. Great cover. One of the best covers in my collection, as far as I'm concerned. Here she's accompanied by the great Jimmy Ross. And Jimmy Ross was a fantastic West Coast piano player. Very much one of the best accompaniers of singers, including the great Billie Holiday. He accompanied Billie several times, and I remember the Ken Burns documentary where Ross was talking about if Lady Day would look over at you and smile at you, that made you feel some kind of good. I mean, when you're playing with one of the greats, and they kind of look at you and be like, that feels good. And Jimmy was a character, and I lived to a pretty ripe old age, and his orchestra, which he had a band of his own for a number of years, backs her up here. And if you want to have a great Julie London introduction, if you don't know her very well, or if you're looking for the great kind of jazzier sides of hers, this record is fantastic. It's melancholic, it's romantic, it's intimate, it's mood setting. You'll put it on, and people ask every time I play, like, what is this? Great. The band's fantastic. Bye Bye Blackbird's gorgeous. Dream of You is fantastic. Somebody Loves Me is fantastic. Oh, Daddy. I love the song Daddy. Free and Easy, which of course Sinatra made famous. Her version of that's fantastic. I love that right there. All My Life. Side 2 has a number of great songs as well. Midnight Sun. When the Red Robin Comes Home. I mean, it's just good stuff. And never really gotten tired of it. It's one of those records you can play, several times. And I generally don't play vocal jazz records more than once at a time. A lot of instrumental jazz records, I'll play each side twice minimum, just to kind of digest them and get to be a little more familiar with the melodies. And I hope things can stick a little bit better. And especially when I don't have a real focused listening session. If I'm helping customers and doing something on the computer, I'll definitely play each side twice to kind of really ingest it and get it to stick, Vocal records, though, very rarely will I play them back to back. But this one I often will, because I love its mood. I love the color it sets in the room, and it's just a hazy kind of greenish, purplish blue at times, and it's just a good mood setter for anybody who comes in the room. And it's a record your wife will love when you play it. Your friends will love when you play it. But it's got some real playing on it that you could really enjoy. It's out there used for $15 to $40. She sold a lot of records. I think there's actually a reissue of it as well. But I don't think you need to go get the reissue. I think you can just go find an old copy. There's so many great old copies out there that a lot of collectors say are just ignoring. And if you find that for $20, $25 and you bring that home, it'll stick with you for a long time. It's just a really fantastic piece. So I'm not sure how many Jay-Z fans we have on this channel, which, it is a jazz channel predominantly, but Jay-Z has really matured in his older years. He went from talking about Rolexes and Jaguars to much more socially conscious, kind of thought-provoking stuff in his later years. As any, black man will in America, going through the struggles that they go through. They start off with that kind of rebellious, the progression, and as a mature adult, you want to find a more peaceful solution to things. And Jay was always an entrepreneur, and he's the first to admit he wasted a lot of money on some dumb stuff. But by the time he's doing 444 and some of those songs the last 5 years, there's a real maturity, and the song 444, sorry, not 444, the song The Story of OJ is a pretty powerfully charged song. And the song's lyrics are unconventional, to say the least. And he's talking about, uses the N-word a lot. And he's talking about field N-word, house N-word, city N-word, country. He's using all these different departments of the Negroes' lot in this country over the years and comparing how they interacted with their white massa. And the video goes one step further and uses a Walt Disney-esque, racially profiled, ignorant kind of perception or conception of what the African American looked like. They really exaggerate the features, and Disney was actually pretty racist at times. And I mean, most of white America was at that point, so there shouldn't be any kind of great, oh my God, there was racism in America back in 1920, 1940, oh my God, who knew? But, I mean, it was pretty conventional fare, to be honest. But, and I actually have mixed feelings about some of that stuff being banned. I think it should be, I mean, maybe have an age limit to it, but it does tell an honester story than the one we're trying to relate nowadays. But anyway, the song the Story of OJ has this great Nina Simone sample. And multiple Nina Simone samples. They're all from the same song. And it's on this Wild as the Wind record on the Philips label, which is a French label. Of course, there's an American counterpart. Philips doesn't do a lot of great jazz, but there's some good stuff on there. And Nina has quite a few records on that label. But the song's called For Women. And if you're familiar with the Jay-Z track, you'll recognize the piano parts, some of the drum groove. Like that right there, that's the loop of the song. And the animated video has, like I said, a very exaggerated portrayal of the African American in the animation of the bass player and the drummer and the singer and all these different characters that he's talking about. They're all animated in a very racial kind of charged Disney kind of way, telling a pretty incredible story, and also showing some social consciousness from a guy that didn't really make a career out of that. I mean, Jay wasn't the guy that was always politically conscious. He was much more fiscally conscious. He was an entrepreneurial spirit, and he was always reflecting currency and material possessions, which is something he's actually kind of reflected on in his more recent work. But hearing this original, and it's 4 women because she's talking about 4 different black women and how their experiences are. Yellow, it's just great hearing the source for the Story of OJ. And I'm not sure who produced it, but they do a great job taking the sample, the loop, different vocal snippets, and putting them together, and then Jay rapping over with the great video. It's one of the most thought-provoking videos you'll ever see in music. I mean, if you haven't seen it, you should see it. It's straight from the jazz age. And again, they're sampling Nina Simone, so it's connected to the entire story of Black America. It's not in any way disconnected, and it's not even rap or hip-hop in that sense. This is black music. Story of OJ. Nina Simone. It's very much the fabric connected from different decades and different generations even. Jay deserves credit for some of the stuff he's been doing as of late. I think he led a lot of kids astray with all that financial stuff over the years. And not to say that being an entrepreneur is bad, but I mean, for the most part, young black entrepreneurs are entrepreneuring in fields that will probably have them be incarcerated. And by no means is that the only path. I mean, there are plenty of great black college kids and black entrepreneurs out there. But for the average kid listening to a rap record, listening to the Migos, the only way they're going to get that Lambo to get those girls is going to be, and they want that ice. They want those diamonds. I mean, that's the only way to get girls, right? It's have ice and Lambos. Even though most of human history we've managed to interact with each other without ice and Lambos, but these kids have this perception that I need to have that to have women and be successful. And for most of them, there's only one pathway to that. It's through criminal enterprise, which is a really sad thing for the rap industry to promote. And when you find out that a lot of these black artists and black labels that are they're not black labels, they're white labels with black artists that are promoting some really negative messages. A lot of these same record executives are invested in the American prison system, which is a public-run entrepreneurial enterprise. And so if you have investments in prisons and you want to fill prison beds, to also have a rap label where you're promoting ignorant behavior, it should be a conflict of interest. But in America, money does all the talking and reasonable thinking does all the walking. And so again, Nina Simone, her records are, she's a bit unto herself. She has some of the elements of Holiday and even Ella at times, but I don't think she's the greatest singer. Her tone is a little mustardy, but she has soul that bleeds out of her. She's just a pain. She's a pain social warrior. I mean, she's a bit of a Joan of Arc in a way. She's just a real defender of social justice. A lot of her music has that kind of undertone to it. Again, she's not really from the jazz age. She does come of age in the late 50s and in the 60s, and a lot of her material from the 60s is fantastic. But she's certainly more rhythm and blues for the most part than she is jazz. But it doesn't mean any of her stuff's not fantastic. And she does have some records where she is playing with more jazzy groups. But she's absolutely black music. You know, at the end of the day, that's the biggest umbrella that all this music fits under. R&B, jump blues, jazz, funk, soul, hip-hop. It's all black music. And it's all very interrelated. And it has shared influences. So anyway, that wraps up today's episode. Nina has been sampled actually quite a lot. She got sampled quite a lot by hip-hop, by electronic groups, kind of jazz remix groups. People like touching her body of work. She has, like I said, there's a lot of significance to what she did and accomplished. And her records aren't anything brilliant in terms of musical exploration, really, but they are exposés and bearing of one's soul and stripping things down to their essential elements. And if you're looking for virtuosity, she's not really the person you're looking for. If you're looking for the expression of a person's soul and the ability to suffer through one's condition and allow the art to help that soak up the blood, Nina's a great place for that. She's very much a contrast to Julie London, who again is very sultry and seductive and charming and alluring. Nina is much more a bit of a poison ivy that could be dangerous. I mean, she's an ambassador of goodwill, but she's also not naive. And I love both of them for very different reasons. So y'all have a great day. Appreciate y'all your support. If you want to support the channel, please go to my Patreon page. We could use that support. Help pay some bills. If you want to like the channel, please do. Subscribe is always appreciated. Tell your friends about this channel. We are a unique slice into the look at this music. And we appreciate all your support, like I said multiple times. Y'all be blessed. Have a great day. We'll talk to y'all soon. Peace.